We made it to August. PT Breakfast Club, August 5th. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning. I haven't gone back and looked. When was the first PT Breakfast Club podcast?
We got to look because I actually got like one of those Facebook memories of us doing
Yeah.
it. And it felt like that was one of the first ones. It's got to be more. It's a year and a half.
Oh, no, it's easy 2 years. I was
2
thinking
years.
we might be hitting 3.
I'm not good with numbers.
Davey
Dave?
Jr. is older than 16. He's 16 months old, and we started before he
Wow.
was born. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Where do we start? Let's kind of overview. So I want to talk about ATI going private. I want to talk about just like a little daydream about if I had taken ATI private, what I would do with it. We could talk about like surge pricing, whether you're the socialist who believes it's the beginning of all evil, or you're the capitalist that says, hey, it gives me a chance to discount less competitive times. And I think we had a couple other topics on the menu, but let's open with ATI. Dave, this is kind of in your world a little bit. What do you know about ATI going private?
Well, I think Jimmy shared it with us, and I heard it from, I think someone else sent it to me. And I don't know the number specifically, but I'm pretty sure their cost per share, the share amount per share was nearing zero. It was under $1 a share this whole year, or most of this year, and it continued to get cut and cut and cut, and they went private. So I haven't heard much about it, but typically they would, I think, have to buy back all or many of the public shares from like if you and I or Jim yeah, go ahead. I mean, they would have to buy it back at whatever would be either the agreed upon rate or the current stock price. Seems like they would need a lot of money for that. Like, where is that money coming from?
I'll
So
tell you.
They still have value, right?
unless they're taking out more debt to do that, and now they're going private with mega debt.
So here's the thing. I did the research this morning on the way in. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember a few. Yes, they took out additional debt. They borrowed at 8% interest. They sold a bunch of bonds to buy out the remaining shareholders. Now, 90% of the company was owned by two parties. They already owned the majority of the shares. They bought out the remaining 10% at like a $2 something valuation. So they got a huge premium on what the company was trading for, which is pretty typical, but it was a tiny fraction. These two parties already own 90% of it. When you compare, and this is what I did, I asked ChatGPT to run an analysis of US Physical Therapy, which is another publicly traded company, their balance sheet versus ATI's balance sheet. The numbers were crazy. Like US Physical Therapy, debt to revenue numbers were, totally reasonable. A small percentage of revenue was debt, whereas ATI, it was like 7x. The amount of debt on the balance sheet was 7 times the revenue or something like that. So it's pretty ugly. But the reality is, it was going to zero anyway. So these two investment groups said, hey, let's just bring it private. Going private, from what I understand, gave them the ability to make changes, to make decisions. They don't have to report to other shareholders and go public with numbers and deal with all the burden of that. So now the question is, okay, let's have a little fun. If you were the new private owner of ATI, they have a ton of therapists. They have a ton of patient visits. They have a ton of locations. What would you do with all that, right? Because if they couldn't make that work in the conventional model anyway, what else could you do to layer on top of the infrastructure that's there?
And so even before answering it or giving like some ideas, Tony's right. Like when you're public, you have to answer to like stock analysts and potentially like activist investors and other folks that are looking to potentially attack the company or have shorts and things like that on the company. So now they don't have to do that. So now they can get creative. They can do some Tony Maritato magic. They can do a whole bunch of things. They can test a lot of things, and they don't have to answer to anybody. That is the benefit now of them going private. So now we can talk about what are some ways that Tony takes over. He becomes CEO for a day, CEO for a quarter or a year. What would you like to see done there?
I would start with the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. Like, what else is already out there that's proven successful? We talked about Luna last week. Why wouldn't they just develop a Luna-like platform? Take all of the therapists they already have on staff, make a platform that allows them to go do mobile and the home visits. They pay them the flat Luna rate, just like Luna does. Leverage, the network they already have. Obviously, I think that's number one. Number two, I would look at this population. I have more information on this population of patients than Google and Facebook and everybody else has. And I've got more pertinent information within the EMR. Why wouldn't I monetize that information internally? I'm not saying sell the information to other people, although it could be done. It could be done. But like every one of these people, they need products, they need other services, they need other things that they would benefit from. And when I was thinking about this the other day, and I'd like to get your perspective. Is this idea crossing some line somewhere? But if a patient and I are establishing goals, like, couldn't I use those goals to the benefit of the patient to figure out, okay, what other products and services would this person benefit from? Like, how I can't maybe get them to all of their goals, but there are other things that can get them to their goals. And if I'm willing to sell physical therapy services to get you to that goal, why can't I sell other stuff to get you to that goal? I think those conversations, I understand a financial guy has a fiduciary responsibility. And I think we should have something similar to say, look, we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the patient. But within that, we can do things that are financially beneficial to us as well. So these are, three directions. You've got build a Luna platform with the infrastructure you already have. I feel like you could do this in months, not years, and you already have access to a huge number of clinicians. Go into product distribution and sales. You've got a huge network of people. You've got a database of hundreds of thousands of patients over the last 6 to 18 months who would benefit. And then I would say, look, what if you got into some other ancillary service that would still benefit your patients, but is more profitable than selling CPT codes for minimum wage reimbursement? Those are the directions I would go. I would leave the PT model the way it is. Like that is a loss leader. That goes to zero. I don't even care. You're building a secondary business on top of the infrastructure.
I talked to a smart person once who tried to explain the minute they explained this to me, I didn't understand it. And the deeper they got, the more I was able to flip to I don't want to call it the dark side. It's almost like I flipped to the light side, but it depends on which side you start on, which was the data that we collect. This was a researcher at a massive hospital. He was explaining that the data that they collected was more valuable than what they were charging to get the data. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense because I can see the transaction. Look, person shows up, you do a thing, money's exchanged. Yay, we win. And then he was able to show me what they're able to do with the data 100, 1,000, 10,000 different ways. And coming from someone who didn't understand it, it really was a light bulb moment. I think this profession will resist this at all odds. I think it is a way to get what everybody wants. The ironic part is, in my opinion, if you're upfront about all of the things Tony just said and Dave is talking about, I don't think anybody is upset. I don't. I think the people that came into the model, I'm talking about our colleagues, myself included, who couldn't be able to wrap their head around it at first, but no, I'm here to do a thing and I want to charge as little as possible. By the way, I want to have everything else at home be the greatest possible. I want to be valued. They don't you have to start wrapping your mind around it from both sides. But ironically, I think if you did, we're so scared when when we see Amazon or Google get into healthcare, what are they going to do with all that information, right? And yet we have it. We could do something really great with it, right? But we won't. We won't. ATI will do none of this. I would love to see them do something like this because I think they could succeed. I don't. I think they'll rebrand with a new logo, or they'll come out with a new slogan. I think they'll marketing process this, and that's not the way to win.
I like the idea of the Luna platform. The challenge is that Luna raised a ton of money and they are 100% well, they say they're a tech company. I think they're still a service-based company that has technology, or a tech-enabled service-based company, whatever. It's a great idea, Tony, for Luna, or for ATI to build out a Luna-like platform, although that takes a lot of technical debt. You got to pay for developers. Are you going to have them in-house? You got to have them outsourced. There's going to be bugs in the app and the technology. It's way harder than just like, oh, build out this platform, because then ATI, going through all these challenges now, would have to carve out or have some allocation to be like, we have not just an IT company that can help our therapists reset their passwords to their emails. No, we actually now need like a mini tech company inside of ATI, which I think would be a big challenge. They do have everything else. They have the volume of visits. They could send out emails to the past patient list and get patients to do home visits, kind of like a Luna model. So it makes sense. I think the biggest challenge would be the building out the tech and maintaining the technology. In terms of the other idea of referring to nearby services, I just want to clarify. So are you saying if ATI is private, ATI approaches all of the personal trainers or massage therapists or other complementary services out there and says, gyms, other, gyms and workout facilities, yoga studios, Pilates, whatever, and basically is asking those local service providers for some lead gen, some, cost per lead to refer them? Or what was your specific ideas around how would that make money for ATI? Because I thought they would have to go just get leads or refer their patients to local service providers and get paid for that, or some revenue share or whatever.
Jimmy?
I think the problem would be asking that question first. I think the smart, innovative.
Yeah, but we're talking about ATI who's bleeding money. Yes. So I'm thinking we're talking about ideas to get money back into ATI. So how else would we do it?
This is where you have to build the relationship first and figure out how you get paid later.
I know. It takes time though. They don't have time for technical app development or building relationships. They need money now.
Yeah. I don't think it'll work then, because now what you just said is they're negotiating from a really, really weak position. So now you're trying to make a deal to get something, and the person with a strong position, you go, great, I know you're bleeding, so what are you going to give me?
The only thing I would say is we talked again last week about how Walmart makes a significant portion of their profit, not revenue, but profit, from ads, paid ads, pay-per-click, stuff like that. Amazon, huge amount of profit from paid ads. How can they do that? Because they have the community, they have the contacts and the people. If I go back just into my little tiny EMR with thousands of cases over even just the recent years, I can't sell that information because of privacy laws and things like that. But I think there's probably a way that I could say, hey, I can put out an email, I can put out a newsletter, I can put out information to these individuals. Dave, you want to buy some marketing space on my platform? And I'm going to,
I do.
So
yes.
then we look at, okay, who has the highest return on a client? We go to financial planners. We go to insurance brokers. We go to individuals that are targeting high net worth clients who have, a definitive need for these kinds of services. Maybe somebody selling Aflac who wants to get access to my community of patients that would have benefited if they had an Aflac policy. So immediately I start selling ad space on to my people that I'm controlling that access. I'm the one that's sending those correspondence and that information.
Wow. Okay. So I just did a quick analysis. I was seeing where Tony was going with this, and I started to use AI to figure it out. If ATI had a TV in every clinic lobby and showed content to every patient, the average wait time, it was making this up, was 10 minutes, right? Somebody shows up 10 minutes early, some are longer, some are shorter. They'd capture about 4,100 hours of attention daily, or over 124,000 hours per month. That's equivalent to 17 and a half years of patient attention every single month. At CPM, or cost per milli, if you saw that a low CPM, you're making low CPM.
Peanuts.
You're making, yeah. Well, hold on a second. You could generate between $30,000 a month in advance-based revenue. Now that's at cost per milli.
That may not even cover their interest payments right now.
That's cost per milli
on the debt.
Yeah, but this is talking about the active patient in the lobby. What about the tens of thousands of people who
right.
Are discharged and they left? Think about all the invoices that ATI is sending out every single day. Think about all of the correspondence that are going out. All of those communications. Those all are billboards that are available to advertise whatever kind of service you want. And then if you start to get a little bit more granular and you say, okay, this is the collection of individuals who had shoulder pain. Okay, we're going to send certain things to those individuals, back pain, certain things to those individuals. Or, this is a collection of individuals who paid on their account on time. They don't have a balance. They're not getting an invoice, but we have that information. Well, we're going to target them because we know they're consumers that'll pay their bills. We're going to target them with something very different than the person who's been in collections for 12 months. Sure. They're going to get a different kind of billboard ad going out to them along with their invoice.
Wow. It's lower than I thought. 30,000.
What's the CPM they said?
$40.
That's a high CPM.
I know. That's where I'm like, wait a minute.
It's generous and it's still not a good number.
No, that's that. But I still think if you went in terms of relationships, even if you went in with a partnership deal, like a split with, and we did break this down. It said hyper-targeted ads for health and wellness brands, partnerships with DME providers, suppliers, or insurance. It said sponsored educational content like MedBridge. I'm like, that's not the audience. That's the wrong audience. Yeah. Patients wouldn't want to see that. Cash pay PT service upsells, dry needling, pelvic health, running analysis. I think that's right. I think if you did that and you offered that audience, I don't know. That feels like a real partnership to me.
Yeah, I just don't know where the ethics lie in something like this. When do you cross the line of now we're being manipulative? I know so many personal things about you. I know you can't sleep. I know your anxiety is through the roof. I know that you have this, family member suffering from this condition. Like there's always such a tension in marketing between when are you manipulating for negative versus manipulating for positive, because we all manipulate. I manipulate every patient that's out there in the clinic in a positive way to get them to do the things they need to do that they wouldn't have done if they weren't in my clinic. We are all manipulators. The question is, when does it cross into a negative form of manipulation?
The ethics come down to three things. Is the content transparent and clearly sponsored? Is it evidence-based, and does it add value to the patient experience? There shouldn't be deceptive upselling or financial exploitation, and the sponsorship should be clearly disclosed, and care decisions remain independent of ad influence. It's still a gray area. It's still, you could say something is or is not.
The other thing we didn't discuss, and I don't know, I didn't look at the balance sheet close enough, is like, could they turn this into a real estate play? Like they have all of these likely leased locations, but when Barnes & Noble was suffering because Amazon came in and took over the book selling market, Barnes & Noble was able to stay solvent as a company because it owned most of the real estate that it occupied. So it's like, does ATI have the resources available maybe to start building a land portfolio, a commercial space portfolio that they would then leverage into the future? The equipment that they have, could they completely just start to look at changing the model? We've heard of medically oriented gyms. Could they do something like that where you see the success of CrossFit, you see the success of a lot of these small group fitness plans Could they bring that into their market? I shared a post. Did you guys see this? Where I looked at the total number of licensed physical therapists in the US. I looked at the total number of private practices. So private practices, the rough estimates are like 40,000. I said, out of the total US population, how many people are expected to have a neurologic or an orthopedic condition that would benefit from physical therapy? Ran all of the numbers, all rough estimates, but ultimately we would need 5-to-1 increase in licensed physical therapists to accommodate the need that already exists out there in the market. And so while many physical therapists are banging the drum of one-on-one only and nothing is better than one-on-one and it's unethical to do anything less than one-on-one, how are you going to do one-on-one when we have a 5-to-1 deficit on what we need? Let's put a little bit of time and a little bit of effort into figuring out how we can scale physical therapy. This is where Sword and Hinge are going to eat everybody else's lunch, because now one physical therapist can manage 700 patients, 500 patients, 100 patients, as opposed to one physical therapist realistically managing 15 patients.
Can we use ATI like for good? Like what went wrong? Like what'd they do wrong? Like we're talking a lot about, over my head, by the way, we're talking stock prices and big picture things. But Jason Craig, who was my professor in PT school, taught us research. He said, listen, just keep asking 3 questions. What, so what, now what? But let's go back to what. Let's go to the first one. What went wrong? Because if you, in my opinion, if you zoom in close enough to ATI, if you guys, do you know anybody who works for ATI, either of you guys or ever did? Like there's good people there.
Yeah, 100%.
When you zoom in, I like those people. When you look at a person at ATI, they're good people. And then when you zoom out, right, it's a huge group of people. Like, so what did they do wrong? How do we learn from it? Because if you zoom in deep enough at ATI, there's just thousands and thousands of good people. What went wrong? What'd they do?
Ask AI while we discuss it. Dave, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head?
I don't know the definitive answer, but they went public through a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition vehicle, basically like an entity. It was a shell of a company. This was how many companies did this. Even
In COVID,
Virgin,
right? They were doing this like in
during
2020.
during COVID, it was very popular. One of the Virgin Galactic or whatever companies with Richard Branson, they went public through a SPAC merger. Basically, it's an entity that was already public, listed, and they were putting companies public that were shell companies, so the stock price was like very low, and then the shell company would then partner or merge with a bigger private company, so the bigger private company steps into the shell of this public company, and it's a very low stock price. Now all of a sudden there's actual financials and the companies are doing millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions or whatever of revenue. And so now all of a sudden the stock price shoots up. And then the investors who put this whole thing together, and I'm not saying this is exactly what happened with ATI, but this is potentially what happened with ATI. The investors that put this together, like the bankers and the financiers and all that had nothing to do with ATI, the stock price goes up because it was a small shell company that was basically worthless or had a low value dollar amount. Now you have a company that comes in that's got whatever 1,000 locations or whatever, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of millions in revenue they're doing, and now all of a sudden the stock price shoots up, and the folks that built the whole deal together through the SPAC can cash out like very early, and then everyone else is sometimes left as the sucker holding the bag later.
So I have the timeline from ATI, and Dave is right. Dave going blind on that. Like no notes in front. There's no way he had notes in front of him.
We did not prepare that. That's all off the cuff, ladies and gentlemen.
So here's the 6 things that happened, right? What Dave said: failed SPAC deal and weak reporting, shrinking market capitalization and delisting. By December of 2024, they went with the SPAC in 2021. ATI's average global market capitalization fell well below the $15 New York Stock Exchange threshold. So they were delisted in 2024. That's pretty recent. Weak financial performance and under-earning capital, legal and litigation challenges, a lawsuit filed by investors between 21 and 23 accused ATI of mismanagement, labor cost issues, lack of transparency, rising debt and liquidity, industry pressures, and reimbursement cuts and competitive strains. these are all number problems. Like, this is the thing that this should annoy all of us, is like, this says physical therapy is not a good business play. That's not what it says. Like, what it says was that some things were misreported. Like, I know I'm oversimplifying, like, you have to, because we're an hour live stream with 3 nitwits, but like, this doesn't say this can't and shouldn't work, right? It feels like, if anything, it was just rushed.
Yeah, and that's not knowing behind the scenes. Like, that's
Right.
what you typically see. It's that time of year. School starts for my kids in about a week. We're getting sports physicals. We're getting, checkups, all that kind of stuff. My wife goes in. She brings one of our boys in. There's the receptionist who's, checking us in. There's 2 people behind the receptionist who, one I'm assuming is insurance verifications and somebody else is doing something else. There's the medical assistant. There's 1 doctor in this office, mind you. There's the medical assistant who takes my wife and my boy back. Then there's like a person at checkout. And then there was a 6th person, I don't even know doing what. 6 people supporting 1 medical professional. And I would
Doesn't make
see it
sense.
every single time. Like, here I have 1 person supporting 2 full-time clinicians, and that person takes care of everything. Like, when I would go into doctors' offices and we would talk about, their business and stuff like that, I've shared this story. There was a surgeon, I want to say he was doing 1.3 million in revenue. He had like 10 people supporting him. He was the only surgeon there. And so what happens? You get an idea, you start a business, you hire a person. They need some help. You hire a 2nd person. The first person goes from doing 80% of what you expected them to do to 60% of what you expected them to do. Then the 2nd person needs a helper. So you hire a 3rd person. Then everybody goes down to 40% of what you expected them to do. And every subsequent hire makes the previous people less efficient. The original person, who probably was pretty good, gets sick of it because they're like, I'm bored. This is not challenging. This is what they leave. And the culture just continues to decline. And the worst part about it, the most frustrating part to me that I've seen for 25 years in business, the person doing the least is usually the most resentful, who thinks that they are doing the most.
And explain that.
So, like, by the time you get down to the newest person who's producing the least amount of productivity, whether it's administrative or clinical or whatever, they have no perspective on what a real normal human can do or should do. They think that they're overworked. They think that they're underpaid because they're coming into this disaster of a culture. And it's typically the person who actually does the least who's the most resentful to the employer about what they're getting paid and think that they're doing too much. I mean, that's the decline of a typical organization. Usually at that point, the owner's frustrated. They want to get out. They're sick of it. They're not making any money. Everybody working for them thinks that they're making, millions and keeping it from them. And it's just a cancer in a business that ultimately destroys it. And so I would imagine at scale with ATI and other companies like that, that's where it goes. That's the life cycle. That's why so many of the owners we talk to are burnt out. They're not making more than a typical new grad salary, even though they're working way more hours than anyone else. Rant over.
Crazy. Can we talk about surge pricing, or we're gonna shift?
Let's go to the other extreme. The pendulum is going to swing in 5 seconds to Dave shared an interesting experience with us. This is the other end of the spectrum. Dave, tell us about it.
Yes. So again, if you guys don't know, if you're watching, listening for the first time, we do mobile visits in New York City. We also have an office, but for the most part, we've always done the on-demand home visits, and got a lead, a prospective patient contacting us Saturday evening. I listened to the call and I texted the wife who was calling for her husband. Long story short, vertigo, BPPV, and they wanted a physical therapist as soon as possible. I texted her 9 something p.m. at night, which that's the start of well, first of all, an answering service that answers the phone, but the fact that the therapist texting back the person who's looking all over the place for any pulse of a physical therapist to reply that could potentially help her husband. Um, that's the start of the edge in terms of a difference. And so spoke with her Sunday morning, and I really didn't want to do the visit. We already had scheduled to go take our 16-month-old infant, our son, to the Bronx Zoo for the first time, and she wanted to visit. And I've said on here publicly before, like we were saying, like 550 per visit for the weekend rates, and 350 per visit Monday through Friday. But I've told you guys I'm trying to get out of patient care, and it's like
real quick. It's not $3.50 for anyone listening. It is
yes,
$350, $500.
See, I'm so used to saying 350 on the phone like that. Like yeah, it's $350 per visit, Monday through Friday, $550 per visit for weekend visits. And this woman, my other therapists are not confident enough or skilled enough yet for BPPV. So it was kind of like it was landing on me or my wife Annie to go do this visit. But I was like, all right, I'll do it, because she was asking for the weekend rate, and she was asking for a visit as soon as possible, like whenever you could get here. They were kind of desperate, but they were serious, and she's like, I know you don't take Medicare, so or whatever the insurance was, and we'll ask for, like whatever what are your rates. And I just thought of like the biggest number before this I ever was paid for a visit was $450, because I'm not doing the weekend visits at 550. So I said to the woman, well, my weekend rate is 950, or Monday through Friday it's 550 if it's with me, or Monday through Friday it's, Monday if you want to see my other therapist that can do BPPV would be 350. And they said yes to $950 for a 1 hour visit. Now, of course, yes, they're wealthy. I know. Yes. And I don't want to post this anywhere on social media because I feel like I couldn't even believe it. And I know folks won't believe it. If I don't need to post online. I don't need to, the fact that we're talking about it here, we're just talking about surge pricing kind of jokingly, and like elastic pricing. And I joked with you guys, like in the future, I think I'll say, 1,200 for the next weekend visit when I have something going on, or 1,500 or something for a visit. Like, it's crazy what's possible. Never thought I would get to this point. So what do you think so far?
We can bridge the two topics, the one we were just talking about and the one we're talking about right now, but it's different, right? So let me bridge ATI with BPPV. That is because I worked with Vestibular First for a little while. They knew the stats up ways and sideways. This is an untapped market. We keep looking at low back pain, which is prevalent, which we should, but there are markets within physical therapies well within our purview. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Back pain is debilitating. BPPV and vertigo, you don't get out of bed. So someone saying, I'll give you $1,000 if you tell me you can make this go away when you are nauseous, like being nauseous 24 hours. Have either of you had vertigo, like even for like a minute or two? I've never experienced it. I mean, I've been dizzy, I've been disoriented. From what I had, my physics teacher in high school was our local pastor, talked about how debilitating, thought about ending his life. This is a person who was like, the most down the middle guy was like, I had this, and was giving a talk and how debilitating. He's like, if this is 20 more years, I can't do it. The reason I'm going into this is we can solve problems that are very valuable. We charge so little for it, right? People are happy to get rid of that. So, Dave, how the patient encounter go? Like, was the person happy when you left?
They were very happy when I left. They found us on Google, but they were very happy even me getting there. And
Yeah,
I like to over communicate. So like I spoke with her, and then another thing, by the way, which is a savvy move for anyone out there. You get a new patient like this, and I also can't believe I do this, but Tony mentioned it, that I should be charging these people ahead of time, right? So I think Tony flew onto my shoulder or in my ear like a little bird, and this person gave me the credit card information over the phone. We charged $950 before they ever met me in person. It's bonkers. But again, that's the ability, like that's what's possible when you have Google reviews, when you have a website that talks a certain way, when you can speak and command a phone call a certain way. Like, I never thought that that would even be possible. But anyway, the visit went well. They're feeling better. They wanted me to come back yesterday. So I went for 550. Right after this, they want me to come back again. It's crazy for 550 for my weekday rate. Even though I'm literally trying to get out of patient care and I can't. It's like
Right.
as soon as I feel like I'm out, they're pulling me back in. They're pulling me back
Well,
in. The patients, but
listen, all firemen do really is just sit around and drink coffee and hang out till there's a fire. And then you're glad that you're paying them what you're paying them. So they're sitting there because you will get out of your way. My dad gave me a story. Like he was a fireman in the Bronx. And of course, some people have a bad relationship with police officers, right? And my dad explained it to me because I had cops and firemen in my family. When you see a cop, typically it's the worst day of your life. Like, and if they're there to see you, right, that's even worse because they're there to get, they're there because you did something wrong. Firemen, it's the worst. It's one of the worst days of your life, and they can't wait to get out of your way to let you come into that, right? So approach it like that. Like Dave was the fire department. Like, let me roll out the red carpet. If you're telling me you can save me from this, I will move heaven and earth to get out of the way. What's it cost? Doesn't matter because they were paying attention on the value. Now it might be a little easier to show that value when someone is laying in bed and cannot move and is like BPPV is in extreme cases is debilitating. How do you continue that value discussion with other things? Focus on the value, right? But again, as Tony was saying before with ATI, charging for CPT codes, use it as a loss leader, but you better be able to do other things. Otherwise, it's not a business. Otherwise, it's what are the 4 stages of Ikigai? Remember we talked about this? Something you love, something the world needs, something you can make a living at, and something you can do well. You can
there
do
you
all
go.
those things. If you can't make a living, it's a hobby.
So there are so many elements in Dave's story that resonate, and we hear it often. Alex Hermosi always talks about how when he was getting out of like the launches, he had somebody call. He said, "Hey, I want you to come out and help me with this." He said, "No, I don't want to do that anymore." The guy said, "I'll pay you whatever." And he said these words, like, "I tried to think of the biggest number I could think of because I didn't want to do it." And the guy said yes. I can tell you so many stories in business where even for me, the best transactions happen when I really don't want to do the thing and I give them a number that I think they're going to say no to, and they say yes. And then that breaks the 4-minute mile. That takes you to that next level that everybody thought was impossible.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you realize, no, this is totally doable. We can make this happen.
Why are you negotiating against yourself?
Yeah, 100%. Now, to Jimmy's point, it's like, okay, low back pain. I would argue the vast, 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 vast majority of low back pain is a nuisance condition. I've had pain for years. It bugs me. Even when it crosses the point of I can't work because my back hurts, it's still not at the level and intensity and urgency of I am vomiting, the room is spinning, I can't stand up straight. Like, it is such a higher level of urgency when you're dealing with an acute vertigo problem. You look at the success of Physical, the franchise, you look at their growth, you look at what they're doing. The only barrier I could see relative to ATI, because we could say the same thing, like, well, why doesn't ATI just take over what Physical is doing? I think it's just hard to find those therapists who want to do that. I don't want to do that. Dave does it. I think it's amazing. If I was a patient, I would want to have a therapist who wants to do that. But I, as a therapist, don't want to do that. So that takes you back to, well, are you getting paid for the job you're doing? Like if I want to just sweep floors because it's mindless and I can zone out and I can think about other things while I'm sweeping, I'm going to get paid $10 an hour. But if I want to solve real problems that have high urgency, like vertigo, I'm going to get paid a lot more. But I do think it's kind of hard to find enough at scale pelvic floor, hard to find enough at scale of therapists who are willing to do something like that.
One of my first clinical rotations, I worked under a PT who was a certified hand therapist, and she said, "Get good at this." Now, to me, it wasn't appealing, right? But I asked her why. Like it looked kind of boring to me. It was. I know the hand therapists out there are raging against the machine right now. What do you mean it's boring? But to me, it was boring. To you, it's not. That's why you do that. But she said, you lose the ability to do something with your hand. Like, think how impactful that is. You can't get out of bed because you have vertigo. That's debilitating. Think how impactful that is. Again, going to Washington, D.C. and trying to explain that to a congressman or a senator is great. Keep doing that. Do I expect a big return on that? Maybe over like a glacier. I expect to see it move in 50 years. And I got to be honest, man, what you're doing is slowing the melt. You're not freezing the glacier again. You're slowing the melt. What can you do? Go directly to the person who's being affected by the problem. That is the way to do it. I know it goes against everything that we feel like is right. But Dave, that's why I asked the question. When you left that person's apartment, how'd they feel? And if the answer was they probably would have threw $2,000 at you and you only charged $1,000, I'm saying Dave's a great guy.
I think I left some money on the table, but it's okay. We'll get it back next time.
But now what will that person do? Like they are now on the radar when, oh, you have that? This guy Dave shows up in the middle of the night. He'll show up on a Sunday and this will go away. Like that is difficult to pay for.
Did we had another topic, didn't we?
I'll take a look.
While he's looking, I know the powers that be out there are going to be like, Dave, you overcharged, you took advantage, whatever. What is the rebuttal? What is the response to that? Like, you feel good, rightfully so, that you had an exchange in value that was above on both sides. They paid you what they paid you, and they received what they believe was worth more than what they paid you. You spent your Sunday that you would have taken your son. You're never going to get that time back again to the zoo, which is an amazing experience.
We went. The zoo was on the way, so it actually worked out. If it wasn't on the way, it wouldn't have happened. But I still had to do the 1 hour pit stop there, right? So, yeah. What would I mean, that's the thing is I like to collaborate with you guys. I like to kind of throw it out there and we can riff on it because it doesn't make sense anymore. Like I'm not trying to do the coaching consulting stuff. So it doesn't make sense for me to post the screenshot that I sent to you guys with the, redacted information or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to post it on social media and not have the full context because you guys understand it. You understand like there's different ways for pricing and all that. So I would defend it by like, you have to listen to the whole story. And that's why I mentioned like, it's the weekend. I'm not trying to see patients. I know I can get the person better. I had no one else that was able to really do it. We're going to the zoo. So I baked in some of the extra things, the extra context around that. And that's how I would defend it. And I understand that if you're hearing this or watching this or listening or whatever, like I get it. Like it's hard to believe unless I think you live in like a city or a major metro. And if you don't, I get it. If you probably think we're just making this up or I'm lying or joking or whatever. But that's how I would defend it is like there's certain things like Jimmy hit it on the head. Like there's certain things that have significantly more urgency. Like BPPV and vertigo is like on one side of the spectrum and the other side of the spectrum is like a knee ache or an ankle sprain or whatever is like the lowest demand of physical therapy. So that's how I would defend it. Like it's something that they wanted immediately. They wanted to find someone that was competent that could help the husband, that seemed to have enough trust and credibility and all of that. And they said yes to it. It was basically like a takeaway close, by the way, Tony. It was like I said, like, well, it's $950 for me on weekend. It's $550 for me Monday through Friday. If you want to wait for one of my staff physical therapists on Monday, it's just $350. So I literally was like not trying to do it. And then she said, no, like we want you, like, how soon can you get here? $950 is fine. $950 is fine. I know it sounds because there's other like in-network practices, like $950 is like 9-10 visits like of a plan of care. So I know it doesn't make all that sense all the time. But that's how I would defend it is like, it's just like a different environment here. It's a city, it's a major metro, it's sometimes a bubble. So I get it. But that's what's possible when you can set your own rates and, we joked about surge pricing and all that. So it is what it is.
You gave them a choice. They were free to make the choice. That's the most amazing part in this. The people who want to fight for choice in other areas are the same people who want to take away the consumer's choice to make purchases. I find that the ultimate irony. But aside from that, not only did you do this, and now this gives you an opportunity, sharing that story, I think, will inspire someone out there somewhere to say, you know what, I can be a physical therapist working at the top of my game, and I don't have to settle for minimum wage compensation. I don't have to be in a system. Somebody else broke that 4-minute mark, and now I can go for it also. Like, that's the most exciting thing to me. So Jimmy, did we have another topic? Because if not, I do. This is an interesting one. You want to read it?
Yeah. This is a post in the Alternative Healthcare Careers group, anonymously posted. I know David's thrilled about that. Anonymous post. Has anybody ever opened their own PT clinic in California or elsewhere? I'm thinking of doing that. I would also want to try to outsource as much as responsibility as possible. That is what a business is, right? Most people outsource their billing and coding, or would that be easy to do for yourself? What other types of tasks would you recommend outsourcing? I would also want to do as little clinical work as possible. Okay. All right. All right. What do you want to do? You're an owner. Like, you're an owner, and you're the money.
No. This person is so far from actually being a business owner and entrepreneur. It's
right.
You're not even done reading the whole post. I haven't even read
Right.
this yet, but
they're
not serious.
Is it possible to be successful at this just by hiring PTs and PTAs other than myself, or would the business be more likely to fail? Does anyone have any experience in this, or has anybody thought of doing something like that?
This person will never start a business. First of all, there's no point of even replying to these types of posts. We can riff on it here. I'm fine with riffing on it here, jokingly, but I'm done with commenting on any of these posts at all, ever. Especially when it's anonymous. Even if it had a name, John Smith. Like, that person is literally asking for permission to start a business. Like, they will never start a business.
Jimmy, put it back up there real quick. So I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say that they're using words that they don't exactly understand or don't intend for the word to come across. So just a couple quick ones. I want to outsource as much responsibility as possible. You can't outsource responsibility. You are ultimately responsible. That is the whole crux of being a business owner. But I understand they want to hire other, I'm going to change the wording. They want to hire other people to do the things. I've got 2 people out there in the gym right now. One is doing administrative responsibilities or activities. One is doing clinical activities. So I think that's what they're trying to say. They don't want to do the patient care. They don't want to do the checking benefits and all the other stuff. But they want this business. Now, the question is, why do you want this business? If you're not going to do, you can take that down. If you're not going to do any of those things, do a bit better business. Like, there is a million more profitable, hands-off, businesses that you can get into. I don't understand why you would want to go into healthcare. I don't understand why you would ever build a business in California. But so it's just, that's one of those things where I'm going to say, and this was me, at some point, there's a level of naivete that you just don't know. And so, opposite of Dave, I don't want this person not to ask those questions. I want them to ask these questions. I want to put better words to the post, and then let's talk about it. But Dave, like, seriously, somebody could, with enough money, could start a physical therapy or whatever discipline business. You could hire clinical staff out of the gate. You could hire administrative staff.
No, but no one does that. No one does that.
No one does that, but you could do that. Like, it is doable, and it could be very successful. So I don't want that person to think it's impossible. I just think it was a poor choice of words. And that's why I shared that post with the team, because I just, it caught my eye as, I don't want to be responsible for anything, but I want all of the upside potential, and I want other people to do all of the work.
And that's not how it works. That's not how business entrepreneurship works.
Also sounds like it sounds as if we're making a lot of leap, and we can't ask them because they're anonymous. So they've removed the ability for us to communicate with them. But it sounds like they don't really have a grasp on how it works. It's like, I would like to do this thing that I don't know how to do, and also have no risk, no responsibility, but all the upside. Can you help me do this? My offer is $0. I will pay you $0, and then you explain to me how this works. Thank you.
Right. I want free help in a Facebook group via my anonymous post. And respectfully, the phrases, the words, the sentences are like a rookie. It's like a noob. It's a newbie that's writing this, and that it sounds like this person has never had rejection, never failed at anything in terms of business or projects or endeavors or anything. It sounds like they haven't gone through much adversity, because if someone had gone through that type of stuff before, they would not be asking questions like this. I'm not gonna ask questions of like, hey, should I do a business like this or like this, or like, should I, charge this amount of money, or should I take this insurance or not, or brick and mortar versus mobile. Like, you have to go out into the field and take action. You have to do stuff. You can't go in a Facebook group and have someone else build your future for you.
Yeah, but I also can't beat them up for not knowing, and I think they genuinely just don't know. I think it's a genuine level of ignorance, not stupidity, just ignorance. I don't know it. I haven't been exposed to it. I have no idea. And we've all been there. We've all been starters. We've all been beginners. That reminds me of the post that we see about marketing. And there's like, how do I market for new patients? Well, that's a question like 20 questions down the road. We have 100 questions before that question that we need to understand before we can even talk about what kind of marketing a specific individual does for a specific business. But it was interesting, worth sharing. What else was on the agenda?
I I was in a Five Below. This is a quick one, right?
Yeah,
So
that was a good one
Five
too.
Below. I remember when Five Below, I think, first came out a million years ago. I remember like understanding the concept. I was like, wait a minute, it's not a dollar store. It's a $5 store. It's everything from $0 to $5. I'm thinking this was great. Of course, you got to go in an entire store where a $5 bill gets you something in the store. So I was in Five Below the other day. Malls are still a thing. I'm still shocked about that, but they actually still have malls, and there's people there during the day. Some people, not as many as it used to be. But you walk in the Five Below, and they have some good stuff. Parents, back to school stuff, some school supplies that are a little lower cost. I was at a Target and saw a 3-ring binder for $15. Maybe that's the business we should get into. Who's buying a 3-ring binder for $15? But in the back of Five Below is the reason I'm bringing this up. Was what was it called? Beyond? Five Beyond, I believe.
Yeah, Beyond Five or something
Beyond
like that.
Five or Five Beyond. And it's the back of the store. And there were things that were $10 and $25. And Dave didn't like the fact that there was a beach chair for $25. It did look a little chintzy for $25. But the idea was
they're $10 on the boardwalk.
I think Five Below is smart in that they understand what game they're in. They quite literally lure you in with the beginning of a store, which is candy and toys and lower cost, high margin items for $5. They're still making money on those things. They understand the concept of when you open your wallet, you're probably not going to spend just $5, right? You're going to spend more than $5. So while you're doing the shopping, they also understand the square footage. Not all the square footage in their store is the same. Just like the checkout counter, and right, we have the impulse buys and the magazines. They understand that. The back of the store is probably a lower return on investment area. So instead of making it a storeroom, they sort of cordoned it off and made you walk through this one little door, Five Beyond, and there was the higher cost items. It's an upsell in the back of their store. This sort of reinforces what Tony has been talking about for the last couple of weeks in terms of, are you offering a pathway for someone to give you more money in exchange for value? If the answer is no, you can't bitch about not getting more money.
So David Ruin's here. If you're still here, David, send something in the chat. I think when we look at product sales, this is another one of those ideas. I'm like, all right, right now I've got recumbent bikes, elliptical trainers, UBE. I've got all of this equipment, a couple $1,000 units. David's been in the product sales world for, sounds like generations. He understands, TheraBands and these little $5, $10, $20 items. But I'm like, why wouldn't we have just the space is there? Why wouldn't we have a QR code that if somebody wants to buy a $2,000 recumbent bike, they can scan it and buy it right there? And so when you look at the square footage within Five Below, I'm sure someone at some point said, Okay, most of our clients are looking for cheap stuff, but there's going to be a percentage that are willing to pay for more expensive, cheap stuff. And so if we put out of 1,000 square feet, we put 100 square feet dedicated to more expensive, cheap stuff, then a percentage of people will buy that more expensive, cheap stuff. In my clinic, if I've got, I don't know, 30 people a day coming through the door, even if just one of those people or a small percentage of the total caseload is looking for something better, why not at least make it available? Why not offer it to that population and make it easy to do? So this morning before the show, David, I'll show you what I'm working on. But this morning before we started the podcast, I was pulling QR codes and I was trying to figure out the logistics of, I can't use an Amazon affiliate link with a QR code, but I can use a QR code on a product that takes my patient to my web page, which then from that web page, they can click and purchase the product. Either purchase it from me, purchase it from Walmart, purchase it from Amazon. I have affiliate links from both those retailers. Or if they purchase it for me, they're going to pay 20 to 30% more, but they can walk out the door with the product. You know, and so working on that, streamlining that, eliminating the friction from that, I think that's going to be my thing for the rest of the week. You'd be surprised at how many treatment tables. I am blown away by how many people buy massage tables just for their post-op knee replacement. 6 weeks at home, they buy their own massage table. That blows my mind.
They want a solution, and never before has it been easy enough to buy one, right? Just in your phone. What does that cost? Now you take a picture. I did a yard sale 2 weekends ago. Did I tell you about this?
No.
I wanted to get rid of stuff. I wanted to make some money, but really I wanted people to pay me to take the stuff away. But I knew I had to get people in, because when you value it at zero, a lot of times people are like, it must be crap then. So I had to put a price tag on some of these things. And I knew people weren't going to come for like an old pint glass or something like that. They had to have like a value. So I didn't know how to price this stuff. Some of it was tools. I wanted to make it a good enough value that someone was going to show up today. So I started taking pictures. I trained a GPT. I said, I'm going to give you pictures of items at a yard sale. Write me a great description, a good headline, and price it so it'll go out the door tomorrow. So someone who needs this and knows what it is would be like, that's a crazy value. I'm going to drive there now. And I just walked around taking pictures and then copy pasting that into Facebook Marketplace. And I sold dozens of things in an afternoon. So with the access to information and the ability to get it, it's never been easier. Like I said, the distance, the greatest distance between you and your potential audience is the thickness of the glass on your smartphone. Why are we pretending like it's got to be that far?
The other idea I had for a long time, but I just never executed on it, was if we're buying equipment for the clinic and I want to turn that equipment over. Like right now, we have a seat that's torn on the recumbent bike. We have some other things that are kind of cracked, and I don't want to have equipment for 20 years. I want to turn this equipment over. So the same thing, if we look at Play It Again Sports, which we have in our town, I love Play It Again Sports. I go there and buy used equipment all the time. But I'm like, why don't I have the QR code that allows the consumer, the patient in my clinic, to buy the equipment I have? That bike, I never use it. I got it for videos. I need to get rid of it. It's just taking up space. They could buy used equipment at a discount, allows me to turn over my equipment more quickly. They could click and buy the same equipment, but new, direct from Amazon, direct from David, direct from any other outlet. There's ways that we can make this work. And then we already talked about this a long time ago, and we can wrap up the show here. Why aren't we renting this kind of stuff? If I was a mobile therapist already going to your home, I could throw this little bike into my car in the back of a pickup SUV. I could rent it for $150 a month. In a month or two, it's paid off. It's free to me. Then I could resell it. Then I could rent it to the next consumer. And the most valuable part of that is I'm bringing it there. It's already set up. I'm the one that chose that device. So the quality assurance is there. But patients don't want that sticking around their house when they're done. They want you to get it out. They would pay you that much money just to get it out of their house. So, these are opportunities within the profession, especially for mobile therapists, renting QBs, renting any of these devices.
Here's why no one's going to do this, or 99.9% of people who aren't going to do this. They want to do this. How do I show up, do as little as possible, and get paid the most amount? And I agree with you. I get it. You've been sold, go to school, pass the tests, get the license, and you'll be rewarded. And I'm very sorry, but that's actually, the world changed. The world is continually changing. So you not doing what Tony is suggesting is preventing you. It doesn't have to be that, but it needs to be something extra. Right now, your 9 to 5 is table stakes. That is the bottom line. What else are you doing on top of that? That's the difference maker.
All right. Closing thoughts, parting shots. David says the rental market on items like this is massive. Therapists, for as long as I've known what physical therapy is, rented TENS units. In fact, I was talking to Joseph Lowe last night. I said, back in the day, I don't know why I got away from it. We are not a DME distributor. So if it was a Medicare beneficiary, we'd have an advanced beneficiary notice signed and in place. We gave them the option. You can go down the road. You can get a TENS unit through a DME supplier and Medicare will pay for it. Or you can get a TENS unit today, $100, walk out the door with it right now. But if we did it for local Medicaid plans back in the day, they did rentals, $30 a month. The TENS unit cost me $17. They would pay $30 a month, a 10-month rental. We generate $300 on the unit. Patients loved it. I wouldn't waste time doing electric stim in my clinic, but I thought this was a great way for patients to get what they wanted at home. And we had a great profit margin on it. We stepped away from doing that for a while. I'm like, this is just free money that I don't understand why I'm not doing it. And it improves patient satisfaction.
Well, it's work, right? I mean, the reason you're not doing it is like, you have to decide, is the juice worth the squeeze? So I'm not saying don't try things, right? Yeah. You should, but ask, like, how big of a problem does this solve? Is someone else doing it better, easier, right? I mean, geez, you could crazy upsell. I'm seeing in Facebook Marketplace, because I was messing around in there, some Peloton bikes for pennies on the dollar. What people are buying $3,000 bikes that are now $300. Nothing wrong with the bike. They bought it because they wanted the dream. They wanted the girl in the video look like she was being held captive, right? Biking with her husband because he gave her the bike. And now they realize they don't use it. So like, I got to get something out of this. Is that the problem? Is that the business you want to be in? That's the biggest thing. I think people have almost an infinite amount of choices. They're trying to decide what business they want to be in. That's simple, but not easy. I'd say my parting shot would be try to take the lessons of the expensive lessons that other people have paid for and use them. That's why I'm so curious about ATI, because the people that I know at ATI, they're great people. Yeah. So what went wrong? It's not a failure of physical therapy. And in my opinion, it wasn't a failure on a granular clinical level. So what was it? How do we learn from it? How do we grow from it? And how do we grow the profession? Instead of doing this, I mean, there's so many people in the comment section. Couldn't have happened to a better company. Like just like cheering as this large company was going through this issue. And I'm saying, like, you do realize that we're kind of all on the same team. What happens to them sort of reflects on us. And if you don't pay attention, you're doomed to repeat it. So try to figure out what went wrong, because there's some good people there. We got to figure this out or we're not going to be able to move forward.
All right, teaser. My parting shot's a teaser. Thursday, we'll talk about United Healthcare stock decline.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
And we'll talk about what you just said, people cheering when in reality, this is negatively impacting clinician 401ks. It's negatively impacting hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries who have investments in United Healthcare. We'll talk about how we should not be cheering the decline of that company and companies like it. Agreed. Okay. See us Thursday at 8:30.
Makes for some good clicks, though. Right? People.
All right.
All right, Tony.
All right. We'll see you, Jimmy.
The PT Breakfast Club, iMode, where morning coffee meets movement science.